This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Thinking of starting your own small business? Well, better get out the legal map. That is, the legal advice that you'll need to avoid problems down the road. Matthew Fornaro is a business attorney whose Florida practice is aimed at helping smaller businesses. In this episode of Bizgnus Interviews, Mr. Fornaro offers advice from his more than 20 years of running a small business that serves small business. Matthew, when somebody's got a bee in their bonnet and they're going to start a business, you say, hang on, you'd better look at the legal aspects first. What do you tell them?
Sure. When someone starts a business, obviously you have to have a plan in place. You can't just helter-skelter do it. So one of the first things when a potential client or a client comes to me and wants to start a business is they need to have a written business plan that talks about everything they're going to do, that talks about their goals, their, how much money they have, how much money they're going to put in, what they're going to do, and all stuff like that. So they have to have a plan before you start and do anything. Then from there, we have to figure out what kind of business organization they want to create, whether it's a corporation or an LLC or a partnership or whatever. So then we have to draft up those documents that go with that. And then depending on what the business is, we have to, if they're, a retailer or if there's something like that, they have probably a commercial lease that we're going to have to review before they get into that. And if they have employees, they're probably going to have employee contracts that we're going to want to look at. And if they have vendors or utility providers, those are contracts we're going to have to look at. So it's a whole process of, you just don't go show up and be, I'm in business today. It's a whole process of planning before we even get to steps. And then it's one step after the other.
How much of that happens before they open their doors, generally?
Much of that happens before they open their doors because you want to have everything in place. You don't want to kind of be learning on the fly or doing any of that stuff. So most of the groundwork and most of the footwork goes in ahead of time of opening up the business.
Have people come to you and you immediately say, oh my gosh, they're much too late. It's too far down the road?
Yes, it happens all the time. And I tell them very nicely that you kind of put the cart before the horse and you're way down the road and we should have started doing some other things. And then I try to help them catch up to where they should be if they did things correctly to begin with. Like, for instance, a lot of people don't have a written business plan. A lot of people just kind of go on Sunbiz here in Florida and start a business. They don't actually have articles of incorporation or an operating agreement. They just do whatever the computer says to do and hit enter and pay the money. So I try to, if they're at that process and they've done all that stuff, I try to go back and fix what's missing.
And so much of that comes from Mr. Google, who's a cousin to Dr. Google, that has the medical people all upset. Do you find too many people are relying on Google and its assorted softwares?
Yes. I mean, look, the internet's great. We all can't live without it. As I like to say, you'll always find the right answer on the internet. However, you will always find the wrong answer as well. So you don't know which is which. That's why you have an attorney, an accountant, a banker. You have all your professionals that you rely on to tell you what the right information is. So a lot of clients and a lot of potential clients come to me with some Google research under their wing and try to reverse engineer things or try to do things, and it's totally wrong. I mean, one of my favorite examples is I had a case where I represented a dog trainer who he had a big dog training business, like, brick and mortar facility, employees, everything. And he founded the business with documents, and this is in Fort Lauderdale, this business was located. He founded the business using documents that he found online from Wisconsin. So everything said Wisconsin law applies, Wisconsin venue applies. So when he started having a few issues with some employees and some other things, it was a total disaster because we had to use Wisconsin law, where I had to go learn Wisconsin. I don't even know what Wisconsin law is. So we had to do that, and it's totally different from Florida law. So that's why, like I said, you'll find the right answer on the internet, but you'll always find the wrong answer. You don't know which one is which.
So who should the would-be business person hire first? The attorney, the accountant, or find a banker?
You know, when I advise my clients as the counselor at law, not just the attorney at law, but as, kind of a business advisor, I like to get all three on board at the same time because it's kind of a team effort in order to get everything done correctly. So obviously, I understand that you have time constraints, you have budget constraints, but the two things that you definitely need if you're going to be in business are an attorney and an accountant. A banker's nice, other professionals, depending on what your space is, are nice, but those are the two necessities that you need. And then in working with accountants, I always defer to the accountants on uh, certain aspects because they're the ones who are in the know regarding the client's finances and the client's money issues, where we can work around and do things based on how they're set up economically. Whereas if I were to go in and just impose on the client, do this, do that, and they go to the accountant, then the accountant freaks out because things are in place that the accountant can't fix. So I always like to defer to the accountant depending on what the client's economic needs are before we go and do stuff.
Matthew, how did you get into this line of work?
Well, as far as an attorney, I kind of always wanted to be an attorney growing up. I used to watch like the People's Court and stuff like that, and I found it interesting. So I went to undergrad, was a political science major, so that kind of set me up for law school. I went to law school, and then when I came out, I worked for a business litigation firm in Boca Raton, and then I worked for two large Am Law 200 law firms in Fort Lauderdale. So I was always kind of doing litigation and stuff like that. I had the opportunity about 9 years ago to either go to an even bigger firm, a top 10 firm, or go do my own thing. So I chose the Robert Frost road less traveled and did my own thing. And when I went out, I wanted to help small and medium-sized businesses because I felt that that was an underserved sector where when I was at big firms, I used to be able to help big businesses and people with money versus helping smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses start up. And one of the things that also inspired me to do that was that growing up, my dad is a small business owner, he's retired now. So I always saw, like, from his perspective, what he was going through as far as the machinations of running his business. And I always thought it would be helpful if he had a competent business attorney to help him do things. So that's kind of the stew that brewed that brought me to where I am now.
So you hung out your shingle, probably literally in some manner, and then what did you hear? Crickets or the thundering herd of people coming to give you money?
Heard the thundering herd of crickets. So the crickets were quite loud. It's hard to go out on your own. One of the things that I did myself when I went out on my own was I really had no idea how to run a business or do anything from a business perspective. So I had to go educate myself about businesses because conceptually I knew like, oh, it's a business, whatever, but I didn't know like taxes, payroll, different forms and everything. So I actually went to two different things. I went to a business enterprise like program run by this thing called the Kaufman Institute. And then I went to another small business program run by the Florida State University College of Business. So I actually got to learn all the business stuff that I never learned in my undergrad or graduate career. And so that information really helped me be able to service small and medium-sized businesses. So then once I got that information and kind of understood my clients better, then I was better able to target my clients, and then the crickets started disappearing, and more and more people came through the door.
Nothing like eradicating the crickets when it comes to business.
Yeah,
As you have run your business, what's been the most important thing to your success?
I think the most important thing to my success is obviously my commitment to trying to get knowledge and results for my clients, as far as whether they're starting up, whether they're involved in a lawsuit, whether they're trying to wind down their business. I think one of the main commitments is obviously providing them the information for them to make business decisions in a accurate and informed way, versus me just being like a robot providing them the law, telling them, this is this. I try to provide an overall, well-reasoned scenario for them to make good business decisions. So that would be probably what my key uh, message is to my clients.
As you look back upon your business, what would you do differently now that you have the benefit of hindsight?
I would not spend as much money on various advertising and outreach things that I did that proved to be ineffective, that I didn't know were ineffective because I didn't know any better. And would focus more on business development by reaching out to uh, actual like meaningful one-on-one conversations with businesses and then other professionals who represent businesses to kind of set up a better network, which is what I've evolved and do now, versus early on where I was like, oh, the internet's great. Let me put a lot of money into Google searches, or let me, appear in this magazine or do whatever, where that really didn't yield results. Because now my SEI is much more refined and actually works pretty well. But when I started out, even though my SEO people and my internet people kind of knew what was going on, it was just hit or miss. And, you'd have people calling you up for just things that I don't do that. How did you figure out my, it's just, there's kind of, a lot of duds showed up at my door. So that would be what I would refine and what I would do differently.
Our listeners and viewers get more information. I suspect you've got a website.
Yes, the easiest way to contact me or get information is to go to my website, which is fornarolegal.com. It's just my last name, Fornaro legal.com. And that leads to all my other social media. I'm on all different social media. And then that also leads to my media section, where I have a bunch of um, how-to videos called Minute with Matthew, where I give you like a minute's worth of advice on different legal topics. I have probably over 100 different blogs on there now that cover most things that you may have common questions on. And then I also post all my podcasts that I appear on, which should answer all your other questions. So I'm pretty satisfied that I've done a good job populating my website with a lot of information. So when you contact me, you'll already have a generally pretty good idea of what's going on just based on what I have on my website. So that's why I encourage you to go to my website.
What would you like to add, Matthew, that we haven't had a chance to talk about? Could be anything.
Just that I'm passionate about small and medium business success, particularly in Florida where I am. And, like I said, it's familial based on the fact that my dad was in small business, and that kind of motivates me to help small and medium-sized businesses. So I'm usually on the side of the small and medium-sized business. I used to represent the big guy when I was in big law. Now I represent the smaller guy, and it's great. I love helping businesses succeed.
You've been listening to the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.